And we begin tonight with evangelicals, a group that, in a surprising twist, is mobilizing support for the Kamala Harris presidential campaign. One group, Evangelical Christians for Kamala Harris, released a new ad highlighting that time Donald Trump told the Family Leadership Summit in Iowa that he does not ask God for forgiveness.
Have you ever asked God for forgiveness? That's a tough question. I'm not sure I have. I don't bring God into that picture. I don't.
Evangelical Christians for Kamala Harris was not on anyone's bingo card for 2024 because most people assume evangelical is synonymous with conservative. It's not. There are plenty of evangelicals who reject the mean, selfish version of the religion that follows Jesus the Christ. We call them red letter Christians. Think Bishop William Barber, friend of this show, who is, wait for it, an evangelical Christian. Think of the Christian pastors who led the civil rights movement. Think Rev Sharpton. Not all Christians are the evangelical white dudes with main character energy from The Handmaid's Tale. But this most surprising election does keep delivering surprises. Even some white evangelical Protestants are fed up with Trump. That is a group that gave him 84% of their national vote in 2020. They're not alone in tiring of his act. A separate group, Christians for Kamala, had a Zoom meeting last night that included leaders from several progressive Christian groups, urging supporters to get behind Harris and Walz. Call it divine intervention? Or perhaps lots of Christians are just getting fed up with being associated with the hateful vision of Donald Trump, his Bible stunts and religious hypocrisy, and are fighting back with a counter-narrative to conservative evangelicals' overwhelming support for Trump. These groups say the conversation on faith and spirituality has been hijacked by the Christian right. And the list continues. The groups that have been hijacked by MAGA who want their identities back include unions, including the United Auto Workers, which is launching a nationwide effort to mobilize its 1 million active and retired workers to vote for VP Harris. The National Black Caucus of the International Brotherhood of Teamsters Union also endorsed Vice President Harris for the presidency. As the union's national president, Union President Sean O'Brien, who spoke at the Republican National Convention last month, is now himself slamming Trump for his anti-labor comments during his bro-fest with Elon Musk. Lots of Republicans are also fed up with the MAGification of their party, which is why Republicans for Harris online rally was attended virtually by 73,000 people, according to organizers, and where former elected Republican officials and party leaders like former Republican Congressman and January 6th Commission member Adam Kinzinger made the case for supporting the Democratic ticket. Are we in the Twilight Zone, but like the really happy, non-creepy kind? Or maybe there's nothing strange about the fact that the Harris-Walz ticket is a movement beyond just voting against Trump. It's a movement to vote for something, to vote for a change, a ticket with zero Ivy Leaguers, no one born with a silver spoon, but instead regular Americans who worked regular jobs, like Harris working her way through college with a job at McDonald's, or Walz being a teacher and football coach with no stocks and bonds in his portfolio. Folks who know what it's like to be middle class and build your life, not just inherit it. These aren't people backed mainly by billionaires and whose sole policy idea is to cut taxes even further for the super rich and corporations. And Americans are starting to really appreciate that. Harris is leading or tied with Trump in 6 of 7 key swing states, per a Wednesday report from the nonpartisan Cook Political Report. And they will roll through Pennsylvania on a bus tour on Sunday, dropping in on the crucial battleground state just days before the Democratic National Convention in Chicago. Speaking of the Keystone State, a new Quinnipiac poll of Pennsylvania finds Harris leading Trump by 3 points among likely voters in a head-to-head matchup. Blue-collar voters, the battlegrounds, Christians, unions, and even Republicans are part of the incredible momentum that we're seeing right now. These people want their brands back. They're not all MAGA. And I think they want their country back, too. Joining me now is Olivia Troye, member of Republicans for Harris and former senior advisor to Vice President Mike Pence, MSNBC political analyst and former Senator Claire McCaskill of Missouri, and the Reverend Al Sharpton, the aforementioned Reverend Al Sharpton, host of Politics Nation on MSNBC. I'm going to come to the folks that are remote in just a moment, but I do want to start here at the table. I was really struck by what the former governor, the former lieutenant governor of Georgia, had to say. I don't know if we have that soundbite of him, really just like talking about like what do we want our kids to remember us for? You were on that call yesterday. What was it like being on a call full of Republicans but who are supporting a Democrat?
It was amazing. I'll be honest. I mean, it was such a privilege. I moderated the conversation, and it was so powerful, and I would say something that gave me hope for the first time in a long time about the Republican Party's future was the responses that were happening in the chat as this call was happening. Just hearing from Republicans across the country, one of them who said, I have voted Republican my entire life. I've been voting Republican since Reagan, and I am going to vote for Kamala now. And I mean, I think to me, I think what people see in Kamala Harris is traditional values that we all look to, right? I mean, it's traditional values for America. It's the values of, protecting our individual freedoms, standing strong as America for America's democracy, standing strong with our allies internationally. I think those traditionally in the past, Joy, were, I would say, conservative.
What Republicans ran on.
Yes, back in the day.
Yeah.
I mean, it was incredible. And the stories and the conversation and the speeches that people gave, I think were very personal. Like Rosario Marin, she served in the George W. Bush administration. She was the 41st U.S. Treasurer of the United States. And she spoke about what it was like, she's a Mexican-American, and what it's like to see all these ugly narratives about immigrants and minorities in the country that she sees in the Republican Party today, and how that's not the party that she identifies with.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, what's interesting about it is, my buddy Michael Steele, he says this all the time, and I ask him, why are you still in the Republican Party? Like, why did you? And he always says, I'm not leaving, they should leave. Because, there has been this sort of metastasis inside of the Republican Party that has eaten it up and turned it into Donald Trump. Donald Trump used to be a Democrat. Like, way back in the day, he wasn't even a Republican. He didn't like Ronald Reagan very much. And he's sort of eaten the party alive. And people who, we've talked about this offline, who they don't even like the guy. Republicans on Capitol Hill, but they've let him eat the party. And it is fascinating to watch people. They're not calling themselves ex-Republicans. You guys weren't ex-Republicans. You are the core of the party saying we want our party back.
Yeah, and to me, I think that's what's amazing about our country. This is an organic grassroots movement that's growing, right? Well, I would say that Republican leadership has failed us as a party because they continue to pander and fall back in line with Trump and enable him, the worst of the worst, instincts of his. In this party, and it's so damaging to the Republican brand. But you're seeing now a movement that is saying enough. And if you're not going to take a stand, we are. And we're going to back a candidate that we believe in and support. And, we'll see what the future holds for the GOP.
The country needs two healthy political parties, and it would be nice to have a normal Republican Party. We can just argue about tax rates and stuff like normal. Rev, I want to get you in on this, too, because I had to say the thing about, like, people think people don't understand what an evangelical Christian is. Again, lots of Christian pastors who a lot of Democrats who watch this network and liberals are evangelicals. I would consider you Kojic, brother. You're an evangelical. So it's like people have decided evangelical equals hateful, mean, and hate immigrants. No, evangelicals actually love immigrants. They actually believe in Jesus's red letters where he said you have to support the immigrant, the aged, the widow, the orphan. That is also evangelicalism. What do you make of Christians now standing up proudly and saying, we want the kinder candidates?
Well, I think when you look at the fact that evangelicals live by Jesus talking about the Good Samaritan who stopped and helped somebody of a different race and a different situation and helped him. How do you preach the Good Samaritan and then call people that are migrant out of their name, or say that people that are leading anti-Semitic marches in Charlottesville are people that are good people on both sides? So it's really incongruous to preach one thing on Sunday and then advocate politically divisiveness and other than me, I'm going to be against on Monday. You have to be consistent. And I've talked to many people that I know who are evangelicals. I grew up a Pentecostal and then a Baptist. And I've talked to people that are totally to what I would call the right in terms of interpreting theology, who has said, but I can't put this in my religious beliefs. I can't advocate somebody so divisive.
Yeah, and Claire, the other piece of it is the working class. You know, it is this interesting thing now, right, where the two Ivy Leaguers are on the Republican ticket, and the ones who want to cut taxes for the super rich are on that side, and the working class folks who worked at McDonald's and as a teacher. Donald Trump recently came out with a quote saying neither of them have ever had a real job. Is he like on something? A teacher is a real job. I hate to break it to Trump. You know, they didn't inherit $317 million from their dada and then take over his company. Trump Organization is Trump's company. I mean, it's Trump's dad's company. But look at what's happening among working class voters. So among non-college educated voters in Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, according to the New York Times Siena poll, the margin that Trump had over Biden was 26 points. The margin he has over Harris among white non-college voters has dropped to only 13. He's still ahead, but it's shrinking, Claire.
Yeah, it's always been a head scratcher to me that a guy that is really into ugly gilded toilets and shows of, you know, really bizarre, tacky wealth, and someone who has never gotten their fingernails dirty. I, like Kamala, I worked my way through law. My parents couldn't afford to send me to law school. I worked as a server in restaurants and all through college and law school to make things work. Donald Trump's never done that. Donald Trump he's never, ever worried about how he was going to pay the bills, except he obviously didn't have any problem with screwing over working people by not paying his contractors. You know, that's the other thing.
The gremlins have gotten Claire. But I mean, I think what she was saying is, and it is absolutely true, Rev, you know this very well, is that Donald Trump was known for screwing over people who are working class, meaning workers that worked for him, contractors, subcontractors that helped him build his buildings. And then he would refuse to pay them and say, well, sue me. I'm not paying you.